quote. I don't think there's much respect out there. And a lot of that is because when you look at the quarterback position with the guys that we have, they don't have a lot of outside respect, obviously. We think a lot more of Mark Sanchez than maybe the public does, and we hope we are right. The great thing about Cam starting finally is we can stop talking about it and see who's going to come to the forefront. Max, how much has Elway botched Denver's quarterback situation?
Let me say, I know who I'm talking about here. Okay. This is a very talented executive who managed to get a Broncos team to the Super Bowl twice and win one within a 3-year span. First as a really an offensive team without a great defense, and then reinventing the team as a defensive team without a great quarterback. I mean, Peyton was done by then, and Osweiler obviously was just, still, he was okay and wound up getting pulled from a playoff game. So, a very talented executive. I also understand that we're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So when I'm talking about his evaluation of the quarterback position, which is really at issue here, I realize that he is in a very good position to judge these kind of things, both as a smart executive and as one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Stephen A., as you would say, however, what are we talking about here? Mark Sanchez? I mean, Mark Sanchez, the last time he played a full season in the NFL, was dead last in QBR for the Jets. I know they had a very bad receiving core that year. And I know in a partial season with the Eagles, in a system that really fit him very well, he was 15th in QBR. So still didn't hold a job as a starter in the league, but was good enough under a scheme that fit him to be a kind of middle-of-the-pack quarterback, which is something I thought was behind him. I still think, though, maybe Kubiak and, it's the right system for Mark Sanchez, too, and he can ride the defense, and Elway's in a good position to know that. If I'm a Broncos fan, I'm thinking, wait a minute. I know there wasn't a ton of stuff actually available at the price you like, John Elway. I get it. You don't want to overpay for Kaepernick, and maybe you don't believe in RG3 because he signed for very little. Okay. And so this was the best available guy. But do you really want to risk what could be a dynasty, which is very rare in the NFL? I mean, if they were to even not win another Super Bowl, get to a championship game, get back to a Super Bowl here, 3 times in 4 years, getting there by modern standards is dynastic. Do you really want to risk that with, let's face it, by all indications, especially over the last half-decade, a substandard quarterback? If I was a Broncos fan, I would not be happy about this.
Well, listen, you shouldn't be happy about it, but you can't panic either. And the reason why you can't is because the only reason why we did not excoriate their starting quarterback last year is because he's one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived in Peyton Manning. 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. He was an absolute disaster, and he was a poor man's version of a game manager for the most part, particularly in the Super Bowl. Yeah, he had a good, decent performance in the first half against Pittsburgh, but for the most part, that's not the Peyton Manning we were accustomed to seeing. Could Mark Jackson be, I'm sorry, Mark Sanchez. Could he be that good? Sure he could. Sure he could. Could Mark Sanchez throw 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions? He could do that.
Probably will, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he could do that. Yeah, he could do that.
He won't intimidate defenses the same way.
He's not going to intimidate.
They said, we need 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. And Sanchez said, sign me up.
But here's the thing.
You're wrong for that.
With the injuries, the lack of velocity on the throws, etc., you do have a Demaryius Thomas who's hungry to prove himself. You do have an Emmanuel Sanders who can get something done. You got this guy Heuerman as your tight end. You got C.J. Anderson. You retained him, okay? And you've got somebody like Paxton Lynch behind you to do some things. Meanwhile, you have a defense that was ranked fourth overall, #1 against the pass, #1 in yards allowed, #3 against the rush. Could they do something? They lost Malik Jackson. Yeah, but the biggest loss is Danny Trevathan. We understand that. But they kept most of their personnel in place. And if you look at it from that perspective, what you're saying to Mark Sanchez is, throw great out of the equation. We don't need it. You're 6 years removed from taking a team, the New York Jets, to the AFC Championship game. Really, the defense did it. If you're looking at the AFC and you're looking at Pittsburgh, you're looking at New England. Sure, Denver could get knocked off, Kansas City, et cetera, but they could still find a way to be respectable.
This is a very good point you just made. When Emmanuel Sanders is your second best wideout,
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy would be a legit lead wide receiver on at least, 10, maybe a dozen teams or more in the NFL, when previously Jeremy Curley was your best receiving target.
Right.
Of course, you're going to wind up dead last. When Emmanuel Sanders is second best, you have a chance to be much, much better. I would still be uneasy as a Broncos.
Listen, I'm saying you could be uneasy, but think about it. The expectation is Super Bowl or bust, right? From the standpoint that we're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. None of us here expect Mark Sanchez to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
The question is, can this defense do it again?
Yep.
The pressure's more on the defense than it is on Mark Sanchez.
They got to run the ball well, too, though, because that was the difference for them when Siemian
On Von Miller just signed that big deal.
That's right.
Of course.
He's got more pressure on him.
Max, what is going on here?
I mean, I have to assume that Chip Kelly is trying to light a fire under Colin Kaepernick. And maybe it's because, the report that Gabbert was supposed to be drafted first overall, maybe instead of Cam Newton that year, and that's so insane. Maybe I'm underrating Gabbert, but he's been around for a minute now and has not shown me at least any indication that he can be an elite quarterback, where Colin Kaepernick has already been an elite quarterback. He's already done it on this level. I mean, he had Jaws and others saying, I'm looking at this guy like he has the potential to be the greatest quarterback who ever lived. That was to make people as knowledgeable as that even think that about you because of your play at the NFL level. In the playoffs at the NFL level, you've already been there. We know you can do it. We don't know that Blaine Gabbert can do anything like that. To me, Gabbert is like maybe not quite a in case of emergency break glass kind of quarterback, but certainly not a guy who should be, especially with his, jitters in the pocket, pushing a guy for the job who, look, let's not forget, Kaepernick, when he was at, Chip Kelly used to watch his games at Nevada because he was with Oregon wanting to play that read options, thinking, this is the guy I kind of like, the way they're using him and the things he can do. He was studying that guy and the system he was running, and he has him now. So very difficult for me to believe that already Chip Kelly is thinking about moving on from Colin Kaepernick, who seems to be the perfect quarterback for him. Well, I have to assume Stephen A. is trying to light a fire here.
Well, then you don't pay much attention to Chip Kelly. I respectfully disagree with you, Max Kellerman. I'm kind of figuring that you were in the sunshine in Southern California, about 3,000 miles away. You didn't want to pay any attention to any cold weather cities like Philadelphia, because I can assure you that this is definitely in Chip Kelly's makeup, his mindset. He is exactly the kind of dude. He's trying to light a fire under Colin Kaepernick so he can run his so Colin Kaepernick will run his own behind out of town, as opposed to Chip Kelly having to do it for him. Keep in mind that this is the same Chip Kelly that gave Colin Kaepernick permission to sit up there and seek a trade, and Colin Kaepernick thought he was going to end up going to Denver, but he didn't want to take a pay cut, so he ended up back in San Francisco by default, which basically means to Chip Kelly that you really didn't want to be here, therefore I don't want you either, but since we got to pay you at least $11 million, the hell with it, I'm going to sit up here and keep you in uniform, but I damn sure ain't planning or relying upon you. So here we go with Blaine Gabbert. Now let me say this about Blaine Gabbert. I've never really watched Blaine Gabbert. I remember he got drafted 10th overall by Jacksonville in 2011. I remember seeing him a couple of times over the years where he looked as petrified as a lost puppy in the pocket, looked like he was shivering in his figurative boots, for crying out loud. Didn't appear to have any heart whatsoever. The flip side to this is that has a strong arm, has good athleticism, seems to have the tools in shorts to do a lot of different things. In other words, not in uniform. When he's out there practicing, he looks beautiful. He looks absolutely sensational, okay? But I'm going to defer to my boy that used to work here, my man Chris Carter. You know that Hall of Fame wide receiver that was an exceptional NFL
I'm aware
analyst?
of him, yes.
I'm gonna lean on him. What he used to make it a priority to say every Sunday morning at least, and sometimes on Mondays on Mike and Mike. Blaine Gabbert stinks. That's what he said. It's not me, because I'm not qualified to say somebody stinks if I've barely watched them, because Blaine Gabbert has no interest in me. I have no interest in Blaine Gabbert whatsoever. But Chris Carter watched him, and he kept saying, Blaine Gabbert stinks. That's what he said. And I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with a Hall of Fame wide receiver telling me when a quarterback stinks.
So wait, you're saying Jaws said on the one hand that Kaepernick has the chance, has the potential to be the best ever. And on the other hand, Chris Carter said Blaine Gabbert stinks.
Yes,
best ever stinks.
Now, when it comes to
Who do you want?
I would say I believe in Jaws as well. However, I'm imitating Jaws, Juwan Jaworski here. But here's the point. In the end, Colin Kaepernick, we've seen what he can do. We haven't really seen if Blaine Gabbert can do anything, even though he threw for 2,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last year with 7 interceptions. Here's what we have seen, and here's where your notion is outweighed. We've seen what Kaepernick has done. We haven't seen much from Gabbert, but we know who Chip Kelly is. And Chip Kelly is the kind of guy that will do everything he can to facilitate Blaine Gabbert getting the job for the sole express purpose that Colin Kaepernick wanted to leave. That's enough for Chip Kelly. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be here. He tried to leave. That's Chip Kelly. That's the Chip Kelly that's been in Philadelphia.
You're assuming that Chip Kelly has learned nothing from his first stop in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Why assume that?
Well,
as a matter of fact,
you know why.
Because he got a job too fast? Because he got another job too fast?
Because he got a job too fast, because of ego, and there's nothing to challenge it when you get a job that damn fast. If everybody's been telling me I stink and I'm wrong, but 3 weeks later, I'm getting $6 million a year after getting fired, what have I really learned?
I will tell you.
What have I learned?
What you've learned is that your first job was a disaster, partly because you believe that...
He's not going to say it's a disaster. He was 26-21.
Partly because, well, you inherited a team, and then you made decisions over personnel, and then it became a disaster.
Right.
Like, based on your judgment and your ability to communicate with players, right?
Right.
And now you go to a place where the guy who you studied it when he was a college player and you were coaching a college team because you wanted to run elements of that thing is now your quarterback. Let's not forget also, Chip Kelly is pretty good at revamping a line, at least in terms of pass protection, right? In terms of pass blocking.
Which is a weakness of the San Francisco 49ers, some would say. Listen, if you're Chip Kelly, you want to be able to run the football. And can that offensive line create holes? You've got Staley, but then a bunch of supplementary parts that none of us really know of. You got Carlos Hyde, who can run the football, but his durability might be a question mark, okay? You got Chip Kelly, who may decimate his defense because they're so exhausted because of the fast pace in which he wants to play, and these guys having to make the adjustment to that could be an adjustment as well. There's too many question marks. I think it's a mistake.
Who are you starting, Cap or Gabbert?
Me personally, I'm starting Colin Kaepernick.
Me too. You know why? Because he's better. And Chip Kelly, job on the line, just win on Sunday. This kind of mentality, in the end, he's going to go for the better player.
If Chip Kelly starts Colin Kaepernick, it will be because of Colin Kaepernick's ability to run the football, and because Blaine.
Throw it down the field.
I'm just telling you what he would believe, and because of that, and because Blaine Gabbert hasn't shown him enough. But if Blaine Gabbert shows him anything, if it's a close fight in any way, he's going to give Blaine Gabbert.
You're going to run the read option with a guy who's jittery in the pocket?
Yep.
And slower than the other guy, who can't throw it as far as the other guy?
I think Chip already knows.
The other guy went to a Super Bowl.
The guy traded away. The guy, even though Nick Foles is nothing to brag at home about, the guy traded away Foles for Bradford. No, Foles was making less than $1 million. Bradford's making $13 million. And trade him away.
Not that Bradford's been really good. He's so much better than Foles.
He did some things for a season, though.
Huh?
He did do some things for a season.
Foles one season with Chip's offense, but otherwise has been terrible.
Yes, he has.